Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening. I'm here tonight with my amazing co-host, Fran. Fran is up in Northern Alberta, Canada, where she is a teacher, not for very long. She will retire in 2.5 months. And she's been a teacher for 34 years. So congratulations, Fran. And Fran is also a part-time rapid transformational therapy practitioner, and hopefully very soon she will join me in full time. So my name is Marina, and I live mostly in Calgary, Alberta. I'm right now at my cabin in British Columbia, and I am a full-time rapid transformational practitioner as well as a therapist. And we are here because we just want to help. We have created a Hopenning for that purpose, and we trust that you are open to receive all the hope in you. We are very blessed to have amazing guests that join us every week to bring you hope with their personal stories and the work that they do. And Fran is the honor to introduce you.
And Marina, we welcome our guests today, and we have a special welcome for our guest, Robert Comstock. Robert is from South Seattle, a place called Renton, Washington. He is a licensed prayer practitioner as of 2017 and an ordained interfaith minister as of 2021. He's certified in interspiritual counseling and a companion as of 2022. He has studied religious science at Seattle Center for Spiritual Living since 1992. But it hasn't always been an easy journey, has it, Robert? And yeah. And those of us that end up working in the healing business, whether it's Marina or me, we are hypnotherapists, or you working as a minister, there's a reason that we do this stuff. It's because it's touched our hearts in some way to do things a little differently than we used to. And so, Robert, you had quite the successful business when you lived in Phoenix, Arizona. Beautiful climate, and now you're back in Seattle. But it's been a journey for sure. So, what happened in your life? I know you were born in Nuremberg, Germany, back in the mid '60s, and from there you got to a place where things weren't always easy for you. So can you share your journey with us?
Sure. I was in Tucson for 8 years, and I was born in Germany because my father was in the military. So I was only there for 8 months. I have three siblings, counting myself, this fourth. A little bit of my story is my parents. I have a stepsister that's older than me, but my parents like to party and drink a lot. When I was younger, I was their little bartender. I think I had my first drink by the time I was 8, and had my first cigarette about 7. And they were my example in life, how life was. And any deep questions I had, they just said there was no answers to those questions. Try to make a long story short, I suffered a lot of heartbreak is what I look back now. It's just I have had such a tender heart, and I still do. And it was extremely broken at a young age. And I learned by their example to suppress my feelings and emotions by drinking, by smoking, by working, by womanizing, anything to distract myself from what was really going on in my body. And so that began at a very young age, and it led me to getting in and out of juvenile hall. I think my first visit to juvenile hall, I was 12 years old. I ended up being what was called a weekend warrior. So they put me in there on weekends so I couldn't get in any trouble. And eventually they took me away from my parents, made me a ward of the state, and locked me up for a year and a half. And And then I got out of there and I got back in my drugs and alcohol. But that was just my way of dealing with life. That's all I really knew. And my dad was very physically abusive and mentally abusive, which was very hard on me as well, because I was the type of personality, I'd take that and then I'd even beat myself up even worse. I was always beating myself up, saying how no good I was and I shouldn't even be here on this planet, and really was on a self-destruction path, and kind of saved my life getting thrown into prison at 19 years old. And that's where I found a book called In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Ouspensky. And it started bringing up questions that I was told there was no answers to. And I really dove deep into that book and started studying it. And when I got out of prison, I was talking a lot about what I had read in the book, us being so mechanical, how we just react and stuff like that. And turns out a girlfriend that I was with saying, you need to talk to my father. And I was like, oh gosh, great. It wasn't something I would do. I took F's in school just to avoid even talking in front of groups or people. And but she intrigued me. So I made that, I called him up. I said, hey, your daughter thinks I need to meet with you and talk to you. And that gave us a foundation, because he studied a lot of Gurdjieff and many other paths of life. He was I think he was a 4-star colonel and licensed in counseling. He was an incredible man. I love him dearly. He's passed now. But I started meeting with him every week. And just kind of on top of that, I was living a very violent life. I was drinking, doing drugs. I did cocaine and intravenously drugs, and I'd go to bars and get in fights. I'd be dreaming about fights. I'm just very angry. I even woke up with my girlfriend's head in my hands one night, and it really scared the hell out of me, because I was in a fight in my dream and I woke up with her. I had a hold of her, and it was just kind of another eye opener. And it was about the time my son was born in 1989, and my first son. And so I don't know if I'm skipping around, but I'm just trying to wrap it all in there. There was so much more as well. But what happened is he started giving me tools, and we had a foundation from that book to work with. And he gave me other books by Rashad Field, Alchemy of the Heart and Breath. That really was a beginning stage too. And it was just starting with my thinking, how I was thinking. I was thinking violent all day. I was angry. I was pissed at my dad. I was pissed at the world. I was pissed at myself. And that was my reality, because that's all I knew. So that's what was happening inside, and that would be reflected outside. And so I was given some tools, that if I just started changing my thinking, that I could change my life, it could be different. So I started carrying this card. It was a business card in my wallet. It just said, I am a child of God. I'm here to be of good. And I had to pull that out constantly all day. Anytime I'd have a bad thought about my dad or somebody because I was angry with him, and I'd pull that card out and I would just read that to myself and take it into my body. And every part of me wanted to reject it, but that was my beginning. It was just, I love the name of your guys' page, Hopenning, because I had some kind of hope that life could be different. I mean, that's what kept me. I was clutching for hope. And so I was given these tools with time. They didn't happen overnight. I had to be committed, and really apply them. And it had a change on me. It changed, there became a time where I wasn't involved in violence no more. I wasn't thinking violently. And it was an incredible journey. It was like my father. I started doing forgiveness work around him, just forgiving him for everything that occurred in my life that I held against him. But I forgave myself at the same time for holding such anger towards him. And I forgave him And what really helped me was the statement, forgive them for they know not what they do. Because I know his heart was genuine. And he just did the best he knew how to do. And this is what he was taught from his father. And it was passed down generation to generation. And, I was on fire and very passionate about what I was learning. And I wanted my parents and friends to learn, just to have this too. I was just, I hear you guys, and all of a sudden they were afraid of me. They say I'm in some kind of cult, I'm being brainwashed. It was a horrible reaction because it just beat me down again. And I really wasn't strong enough to stand on my own. And then to have the people you love reject you. Here you are one way and you're trying to do so much better. And I guess I was more familiar being a broken, dysfunctional human being than somebody that looked more healthy. So that was very challenging. And so I had to really let go of any attachment of anybody else, which really was a struggle because I wanted other people to do the work too. They had fault, they did wrong. Why do I have to do it all? That's what a tape I played. Why do I have, and that still lingered for many years, even to the last few years ago, that I can laugh at it when it comes up. Why do I have to do the work? But there's some beauty in this that it puts me at breathless, the beauty and the love, the depth of doing this work, because I let go of what my father had to think or my family, and I just kept doing the work. And I seen him change. We started hugging, we started talking, and I'll get emotional. I'm an emotional man. And he started saying, forgive me for the stuff. Please forgive me. And I says, I have. He started really wanting forgiveness, and we had embraces, and he just really transformed. And it felt like just a ripple of my vibration, my energy, because I believe everything's vibration. Our physical form and our love is a vibration. It's like the law of attraction. That's our vibration, what we're attracting. And I think I have evidence in my life that that's what I attracted by being violent. I attracted that even in my dreams. It was horrible, and the kind of people. So then just shifting that and really practicing deeply, love and forgiveness for my father, my dad transformed. And what a beautiful relationship we ended up having. And it was so beautiful before he transitioned, that we had such a healthy relationship. And he was able to start forgiving his father, which was incredible because he was so angry with his father. And his father died when he was 16. And there was times in my life, the anger and rage that would come out of him anytime that his father was mentioned was off the charts. And so for him to shift before he died, I felt a vibrational healing. I believe we can do healing for our ancestors, and I know that's what was taking place, and it was beautiful. And that's just one little piece of much of my life. And I didn't just leap from there. There was many trials to get there. That was in the 90s, because that was my main thing, was violence and anger to my dad. So it took probably 5-6 years before I even thoughts of anger quit coming. I had to, where I didn't have to do so much forgiveness work constantly with him. It took, but I was committed to it, and I just stuck with it all. People say you got to hit rock bottom before you'll change, but my experience is everybody's rock bottom's different. Every one of us are different. We're unique individuals, and we're not here to be compared with each other. We are literally, I believe anyhow, we're here to help each other and love each other and assist each other to see the beauty in each other. And that's my aim in life, is to lead with love, to be the example of love. But I'm jumping around, because it has not been an easy path. That was a tough time then to get rid of the anger. That was a big transformative time. But then, I kind of fell back in ways of old habits, but not the violent part. I womenized a lot of my life. It was just my way, again, avoiding emotions. That's the key that I want to talk about here, is because there's so many ways we avoid our emotions and suppress them, and for me, I believe I came into this world, I have a lot to heal with my ancestral chain, and that was one with my father. But also womenizing and honoring women is another thing I believe that I'm here to do, because that was another way I'd avoid my emotions and feelings. And I didn't realize, I don't know why I was so angry almost too with women for some reason, because I felt like my mom was absent. She was there, but she wasn't there, and I think I held her responsible for a lot of it. So anyhow, this journey has been incredible. And I want to talk a little bit about my stepdaughter that died in 2007 from methadone. She wasn't even out of the house 4 months, and she got a job at IHOP, and she met a gal there, and their parents were selling methadone, and she had asthma, and there's nothing like a parent to get a knock on their door at 1:30 in the morning, and say your daughter's dad died in some stranger's house, stranger to us. And it was shattering for me. That's the only word I can put it. It shattered me like a piece of glass. And her mother. And we did everything just to hold each other. But it really set me again in another tailspin. That was another monumental moment of my life where I started questioning deep, what am I doing? I had a successful business down in Tucson. I had 2 homes down there, but I was working all the time and cheating on my wife. And then my kid dies, and I was like, what am I doing? I just really started looking at everything. It was like, this isn't working anymore. This has got to change, and I'm from Seattle. This is where I grew up, and this is where a lot of healing happened. So that's what I wanted to do, is come back to Seattle. That was my heart's desire. And so I handed my business off to a friend of mine that already had a business. I worked with him for 6 months, so all my customers knew I wanted a graceful transition, not to burn any bridges, make sure they all knew that they were being handed over to good care, and moved back to Seattle in 2010. And my wife and I ended up, it was hard. We had some things happen, but we ended up getting divorced by 2011. And then our son died. He was 16, rollover car accident. And it was just, again, it was just so shattering. And I was back involved in the studies and taking classes. I just really submerged into changing my ways. And living different. I wanted their lives to go with purpose. And I made a commitment, an oath, that I will live in such a way that their lives will be known for the greatness they were, because they were incredible human beings. And they're still with me. I feel them stronger than I ever have. And there's just things that happen that there's just no explanation. I've even heard my name called, and that's just so eerie, and people wouldn't understand it unless they experienced it. And it's happened twice. And I had a witness the second time, because your own mind doubts that it happened. The first time it's like, oh, maybe I just thought I heard that, But when you got somebody else that heard it, it scares them to death, almost, that there's something valid there. And so the death of my kids, and then their mother got brain cancer, and she asked me to help her so she could die in her own home. This is stage 4. And I felt everything dissolve in my life at that moment. All the little stuff that I say we, but as people, we can make, the term make a mountain out of a molehill. There's so many damn molehills we as people make mountains out of. At least I had anyhow, that really are so petty and, when it comes to human life and love, there's nothing more important. I mean, who are you in the midst of this? And I had stories, I speak about stories. We all have stories, but one of mine is I can't cook or I can't do this. When she asked me to take care of her, it's like I was willing to recreate every story in the freaking book that was needed to rise up and just do what needed to be done. And I did. And I took care of her 11 months before she died. And Sundays, though, I'd take Sundays out, and I'd go to my community, and that's how I got recharged, my church that I go to. But the hospice people, they wrote me letters how they were so impressed how well they never seen anybody do as well. And they were always attentive to me. You sure you don't want somebody to come in here and do this or that? And I was like, no, I got it. I got it handled. And Christy and I had so much healing. Again, the healing journey was just her ancestral healing that took place to know we were already married. And she asked me and I came in, I quit everything full time. And because she had this thing of being abandoned in her ancestral change. And I was like, I will not abandon you. I told you that when we were together, and it's funny how we do things in our life to push people away. So we stay in these patterns. But she came to that place with brain cancer. There was just she had to let somebody love her and take care of her. And I was that person. And there was such a deep healing, the willingness to say yes, the willingness to show up for another human being, the willingness to be of service is profound. And through all this, I call it a softening. I wrote this thing. I'm sure you're both familiar with Rumi, and the chickpea, the boiling, pushing it into boiling water, or the phoenix comes out of the ashes. He's been burnt. And I'm willing to walk into that fire. I'm willing to dive into that boiling water, soften me and stay in that state of softness, because that's where, for me, is the sweet spot in life. If I can stay soft, I can show up with a loving presence and be a loving presence for people. I mean, I went to New York and what year was that? 2019, my girlfriend got ordained. And I spent a week walking the streets, and I just made a point of talking to people that were sitting on the street corners and just looking at them in their eyes and acknowledging them and calling them brother. And it was amazing, the shift in energy. This one particular old guy got a picture of, I'll share with you sometime. I've shared it on Facebook. He's a white-haired beard down here, almost like Santa Claus. He's cussing and drinking and cussing at women. I'm sitting on a bench on one side of the street, and I'm watching him on the other side. And he's just really going off and and I walk over to him. I just listened. See, this is another learning for me, is listening to this voice that I've rejected so much in my life, in my heart. And it said, go over. I was like, okay, I'm willing just to walk over. And I sat next to him and I says, hey, you don't need to be doing, these are our sisters walking by here. And you're my brother. And he looks at me and he puts his head on my shoulder. And I took a selfie of it. And it was like he transformed for that moment I was there. And it was so beautiful. And then I got up and walked back across the street, and it's almost like he just carried on his old self the way he was before that. And it's been a great learning for me, again, how we can affect our environment by our energy that we carry, and how important that is to not underestimate ourselves as human beings and the amount we can do. I think we see things in the world and we think we got to take it all on, and that gets overwhelmed, so we don't do nothing. It puts us in a state of inaction. And I think the most powerful thing we can do is the inner work inside of ourselves, because that will affect the greater whole in a profound way. And so I live to be of service. I mean, there's so much joy. I mean, I thought I knew what love was in my younger years. I used to hear the statement, you die for what you love for. Well, I would die for my kids, well, they died for me, and it's like, so how do I live for them? Well, you find that which you would die for and live for it. Try that one on. A great teacher of mine told me that one day, and I was like, boy, that stuck, because I live for those kids. I live for myself. I love myself in ways I never did before. And it's a profound experience, to have your whole vocabulary, your definitions personally, because I find we as people have our own individual definitions of words. So it's so important to dialogue with each other. And we don't do that a lot as people. We just assume we know what the other person's saying, and most of the time we don't. We don't know the deeper what's trying to be expressed through the words. And so I've learned to go deeper with that myself in my practice, because I can use my life as an example. All I knew is love was my kids. That's what you love. But that word has been transformed threefold now. Love is so much bigger than an intimate relationship. Well, I say intimate relationship, those words have been transformed as well. Intimate relationship used to be sex with my partner, but intimate relationship is a deep conversation with another soul to me now. And that's love. There's love that is profound, and I live for that love. I'm a pretty good sized man. I'm 250 pounds, 55 pounds. I've always been what's called a man's man out in the world. But I tell you what, I'll sit down and cry with you. I got a heart that's soft, a heart of gold, and I just aim to do good in this world, and if I can help anybody, everybody's at different places. And I think that's the hardest thing for any of us, to ask for help. I know it was for me to reach out as being a man than I am. That just means you're weak. Well, I'll tell you what, that takes more courage and strength than not to ask for it. And I really encourage people, if you're watching, to ask for help, because there's so many people that want to be there, and it's a service to ask them. And I don't think people realize what a service is. Even when somebody's offering you something, it's a service to accept it. You're being of service, you're allowing them to be of service. And it's so reciprocal. I used to not see that, but you look at the elderly, and when you go to help them, I told you're being of service by allowing me to be of service to you. You're being of service to me. And it's so reciprocal if we can just shift our perspectives. A lot of times that's all it takes, is just shifting our perspectives. We're all looking at the same mountain. We're just standing in different spots. It's one of my ways of talking about mountains and houses. We all have our own. It's like I'm up and down the street here. I'm looking out my window. This is my truth and my experience, but my neighbor's looking out his, and that's his truth and his experience. And same with my neighbor on this side. And when I can accept that and not have to impose mine, and know that they're just got a different view, then I can accept all those rough corners in myself, and I accept them better too. And that's another practice of mine, it's just really deep acceptance of love. Love leads the way.
Thank you. I mean, that's quite the I agree. It's not always easy. It's not always easy. And yet it's the best. It's the best way to be. When we start to have a sentence that says, "Thank you, Lord, that I'm not like fill in the blank," that's the I think it's the red flag that we need to look at our own judgment, and whatever the fill in the blank was going to be. It's like, by the grace of God, I've been given the tools. By the grace of God, I've been given whatever color of skin or abilities in life. And that judgment, oh my God, I think judgment has got to be the worst. It's got to be the worst when we start judging each other.
Well, that can be a judgment too. That's so true though, friend. I mean, that's one of my practice anytime, and I think we all do it if we're aware of it or not. But when I catch myself doing this, I immediately, because I know it's something in it for me to heal and grow. And I catch myself pretty quickly, but I still do that occasionally. And because I'm still here growing, as we all are. But if we can turn around and say, what is it in me? You know, I like the term, where am I withholding love? Well, I was withholding love in that moment. And how can I show up and give them the room to be who they are, but at the same time, forgive myself for pointing the finger right in that moment. And another thing I wanted to share that you brought up, I mean, you didn't bring it up, but what you said kind of triggered it. So when I first started this stuff back in the early 90s, I remember going to my teacher, Wes, and I was like, I feel like I've just got my ass whooped. You're taking on a professional boxer and you don't know how to fight him. You know, that was my way of talking about you're taking on a lifelong programming and all of a sudden you're going to challenge it. How dare you? You better be ready to stand up and stand firm and be committed. And I think sometimes that's where hitting that rock bottom comes in. Is like it gives us leverage to say, you know, I've had enough. I really have had enough of this. I got to make a change, but it's not easy. That's what you said. It's not easy. And it can be rough, but that's another freaking gift in it alone too. I think nature is such a prime example and reflection for us all. And I don't think we use it enough. We look at the seasons, you know, winter, you take the Native Americans, winter was a dark time. There, you know, you didn't have the crops. Summer was the good times, but they always knew it would pass, you know, and that was just part of life. So to be able to embrace the discomfort, if you will, I think is a key element. Bring love to that discomfort because we're going to have it, and don't make it bad. I did that so much in my life, pushing it away and making it bad, that actually gave it energy, gave it more energy and more vibration. And if we can shift that as well, I heard Tony Robbins say, and I hear so many teachers, they're all talking about the same thing. It's just trying at different angles and different languages, which I think is so beautiful, really, because that way somebody's going to find their kind of language. And well, I got lost what I was going to say there.
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins, yeah. What did he say? Ugh.
You know what, the way I look at it, and probably Marina too, it's kind of like looking at a diamond. So a diamond with a lot of facets. So it doesn't matter which facet you look at, it's going to show you a different reflection of what's pointing at it, but it's still the diamond, right? So no matter how you look at it, from which point of view, it's all correct. It's all correct. And Marina knows because I recently went through a valley. I call them valleys, right? The hard times. I recently went through a valley where I couldn't walk, I couldn't run, I couldn't leave my house, middle of winter, couldn't see my friends. And it was a hard, dark time, right? And the best of all was when people would come and sit with me there, come and sit with me in the valley. Nothing
Yes.
they can do about it. They can't really help me, but just sit with me in the valley and just make your presence so that I know that I'm not alone.
Well, I think that is valuable beyond measure. That's what a spiritual companioning counseling is, really holding sacred space. I know when my children died, people didn't know what to do, you know, and they had good intentions. And I tell you, one of the worst things, and I'm just sharing this because maybe someone will hear, just don't do that and say, I know what you're going through, because you don't. You don't have the clue what I'm going through, and I don't have the clue what you're going through. I just know you're hurting and I'm hurting. I can say that. But to be with somebody, just to be there, be that presence, absolutely, friend. That's so valuable. And a loving presence, you know, it just says, I'm here if you need me. What do you need? You know, I'm here. Don't try to fix me. Don't try to, you know, make me okay, because I'm not okay. And that's okay too. It's okay to not be okay. That's a great book too.
So
Yeah.
Fran and I deal a lot with people who think that they have hit rock bottom. And then I listen to your story and I'm thinking, Yeah, they don't know the half of, and it's amazing to hear how many obstacles you had to overcome to get to the place where you are today, where you can be that spiritual companion, that prayer warrior, that person that's there to give hope to. I mean, there's so many things that you said, Robert, that really stuck with me. Feeling your loved ones still with you. It's an energy set. Everything is energy. I cannot agree with you more. And what an absolute gift that you have today to be where you are now and become just such a beacon of hope. After you've been at so many lows, so many valleys, like planets in your life. So tell me about your day to day, your life today. What do you do? How do you help people? And
Well, I try to listen to that center, which is funny because a lot of times I'll have a plan and all of a sudden I'll hear something else. It was funny one day, I'll tell you a story. I was just told to put a pair of socks in my backpack and I didn't know why, but I just did it, okay. And then I'm driving down, I was going to go to this coffee shop down the hill and I seen this person on the street corner with a sleeping bag. And I thought he looked awfully familiar. It's like, what's his name from when I grew up? And I just thought, oh, maybe I would say something. But I ended up driving almost a half mile down to the coffee shop. But this voice kept not leaving me alone. It's like I should have stopped or I should have did this. I should have. And I even got out of my car to walk in and then I turned around. All right, I needed to go back. All right, if he's there, I'll see him. But I seen which direction he was going. So I drove all the way back up there and he's going this direction. I drove, ways. He had got quite a ways, but I saw him. So I turned and pulled over and he come walking by and I called his name. And sure enough, he was this kid that I grew up with in the neighborhood. And he was telling me he just got out of jail. He was 3 days clean on meth or something. And I says, well, I don't want to give you any money, but I'll go to the store and buy you something to eat if you want to do that. And he's going, well, I could really use a pair of socks. And I was just like, I've told people this story because I'm just blown away how God will show up in my life sometimes. And so I gave him that pair of socks and I bought him something. And so I do life a lot like that. Since my ex-wife came down with cancer in 2017, that's when I left my last job that I had. I was working for Sears doing appliance repair. And I just was never in even the 5 years I worked for them, it just did not feel good. They wanted you to lie to customers. As this just was not working for my being. And I was so in turmoil inside constantly about how do I survive and how do I do this if I don't work for them. But when I took care of my ex-wife, she supported us through her disability. Actually, the state wouldn't even pay me because I am a felon criminal from when I was 18. It just blows me away, for distributing marijuana, which is legal now, but it's just crazy. Some of the laws, here I am taking better care than most people would have heard. But anyhow, long story short is I just couldn't go back to work the way I normally did. And that's how I ended up in ministerial school. And I didn't even know how I was going to pay for that. That was a $10,000 class, $5,000 a year for 2 years. But it just showed up. I made a GoFundMe and people started donating to me that believed in me. And I do side jobs, I do side work. I'm kind of a handyman guy. I can do a lot of things. And so I do that to survive, but I got an incredible girlfriend, she supports me in what I do. And so I'm just constantly listening for what's mine to do, but I'll make a plan, but also listening in case there's something else for me to do. And so I live a lot like that right now. And right now I'm looking at opening a web page and some different ideas some friends have given me so that I can start putting my services out there and maybe getting compensated for it. But I'm not attached to that either, because sometimes just walking out on the street and helping somebody, I just know that I'm taken care of in ways that I've never been taken care of before. So, and being of service is one of my main things. So I go to church, every week, and one Sunday a month I'm in service where I'm on duty, and we do a prayer circle for people that want prayers, and then we do what's called a ministry of prayer. And so I'm just available for people that need that kind of support, and I'm always available like that for people in everyday life as well. So I'm putting that out there more, to take on clients. Just like you guys showing up is just a gift from God, in my opinion. It was just how does this stuff happen like this? And I was nervous, but again, it's an opportunity to practice. I'm not here to be compared to the last guy that did the interview or the one before. I am who I am. And the more I am comfortable in my skin, the more authentic I can show up. And that's what I do. I try to be very vulnerable and show up authentically. I don't try to be vulnerable. I am willing to be vulnerable and show up authentically. So right now, that's where I'm at in my everyday life right now. Just who knows what tomorrow brings.
Well, you live in one of the most expensive cities. Um,
Yeah,
I
that's
kind I,
crazy.
com- I kind of compare Seattle to our Vancouver, right? It's so similar, and Vancouver is extremely expensive to live in. And you really are putting your faith, um, it's like the birds, right? The birds don't worry about where anything is going to come from. They just continue to sing. And you're kind of doing the same thing. And there's so many of us, I me myself included, where if I'm not sure about having enough money to you know retire, if I've got enough, in Canada we call them our RSPs. I think you guys call them 401k, something like that.
Yeah, well, I've never had one.
Right, right. And then there's the push from the media that you have to have a certain income in order to retire. $1 million is not enough anymore to retire on. And it plants seeds of doubt. It does plant seeds of doubt. And it's refreshing to hear someone like yourself that is like, there's something bigger out there. There's a bigger call, and I'd better pay attention, because my plan A is very probably not the main plan that I'm going to be following today. And it's refreshing.
Well,
It's
I just really have rebelled. I have a hard time. Even hearing you say that just kind of made me cringe, because I feel like our society makes us walk, oh, we live in the land of the free. Yeah, as long as you stay between this line and this line and do this. Well, how much? I don't feel the sense of freedom in that, So I still have a struggle with that. But if we look around, life is so supported. And so that's where I'll have a daily prayer, just knowing God supports me, and I am being supported. I got a trip planned to India this year. It's already paid for. I'm going to Alaska at the end of
It's
July.
a theme.
And I've been to Egypt twice. And I'm just like, how does this even happen? But I don't question it. I'm just listening to that voice that I repressed my whole life. I think we all have it. I remember as a kid, I just didn't want to listen to it because it scared me, really. And now, unfortunately, when my kids died, I literally went physically put my hands out and my neck up. I don't care anymore, not care in a way that I'm willing to step out into the unknown. And that's, I think, the hardest for us as human beings. It's much safer to stay in this little square right here, but to go out beyond that edge, we don't know. It might be, and I'll be the one to step over there. I'm willing to go there, because you know what? There is something greater than me that's got me. It's always had me. And that don't mean be ignorant. We are given a brain and we are given these tools to use. So I don't want to make it sound like, I'm definitely not going and jumping in a lion's den yet. I don't have my vibration that high, but I believe that a person could, but I think be wise and know your limitations.
Well, even Jesus didn't jump off the top of the mountain, right?
Right?
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor, Robert. It's been an honor to listen to you and to meet you. It feels like in person, and all the best. And when you get your website up and running, we'll be the first to view it.
Oh, sweet.
And how can people get hold of you if they want to be in touch and want to hear more about you?
Through Facebook right now, I pretty much accept everybody as friends, as long as I go check out there and make it look like they're actually a real person first, then I'll accept them.
Right.
And yeah, for now, I think that's a good way. I try to post positive stuff all the time, and I get good feedback on that, and
Wonderful.
so they can
Well,
private.
we will have you on and definitely get some positive you. And you're welcome to share this as well. And we've been absolutely honored to hear your story, to see how you thrive today despite all the bad things that happen. Thank you so much for sharing it and for being so authentic.
Well, I would like to add, if we can, it's just everybody goes through a lot of stuff, and there's a gift in it. That's why I was talking about. Tony Robbins says, make your worst day your best day of your life. And that's all our perspective. We have more power than we are taught in our life. And if we can just shift and make the worst day the best day of our lives, because we can't know the depths of contrast without the depths of darkness. We can't know the depths of light. So there's a great gift in that. And when we can start embracing that, it'll really shift our personal lives.
Yeah.
And I want to just help people do that.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful work. And thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and God bless the work you both are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here at the Hopenning. It's happening. We hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked us, please subscribe, and we will see you next time.